Uganda's parliament has voted to send troops to Gaza, joining the international force that U.S. President Donald Trump's Board of Peace has been pushing to stand up since February. Now, the motion was brought by Defense Minister Kiriwa Kiwanuka, who leaned on Uganda's track record in Somalia's peacekeeping mission to make his case to lawmakers. It's the first time Kampala has publicly signaled it's willing to put boots on the ground in Gaza, joining Morocco, which had already pledged troops of its own. Now, not everyone in the chamber was convinced because opposition MP Hassan Kirumira warned that the move could stir up diplomatic concerns given Uganda's membership in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and pressed ministers on what he called the real question: whose side would Ugandan soldiers be fighting on? Now, the deployment would fall under the roughly 20,000-strong international stabilisation force that American Major General Jasper Jeffers is set to lead, meant to move in once Israeli troops complete a phased withdrawal under the ceasefire framework agreed last year. Now, that framework is fragile. Israeli strikes have killed 1,250 people since the truce took hold in October, and Israel has already flagged what it calls serious security concerns about parts of the disarmament deal. Joining us to speak on this, we have Isaac Asare, founder and president, Association of Conflict, Peace and Security Experts in Africa, and the Africa Center for Collaborative Dispute Resolution in Accra, Ghana. And we also have Godber Tumushabe, his associate director and senior policy analyst, Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies in Kampala, Uganda. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
So let me begin with Godber. Godber, Uganda's defense minister leaned heavily on the country's Somalia peacekeeping record under AMISOM and ATMIS to justify this deployment. But, you know, urban warfare in Mogadishu against al-Shabaab is different from policing dense, devastated Palestinian neighborhoods. So what are the tactical capabilities that Uganda brings to Gaza, and what are the operational blind spots? You know, let's start from there.
Yeah, no, basically, I think that we need to start from the point that the Uganda government has run a very, very interventionist approach across the continent, that the Uganda People's Defense Forces is deployed in multiple countries on different missions. Somalia is just one of them, and the first one. Right now, we have forces in DRC. We have forces in South Sudan. There are unofficial reports of forces in Sudan and a couple of other jurisdictions, actually even Central African Republic. So by its very nature, the Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has taken a more interventionist approach, mainly driven by his passion about Pan-Africanism, and therefore the UPDF is available to be able to intervene in many other areas. Now, with the Gaza, I would say that this is now an area which is outside the continental Africa jurisdiction, and therefore it's a different ballgame. But I think in terms of tactical operations, the UPDF has this battlefield experience, fighting insurgencies and different wars in all these theaters of war that I have mentioned. So in other words, they go to Gaza with some advantage in the sense that these are fairly battle-hardened troops because they have been fighting since the deployment in Sudan almost 20 years ago. So they have been fighting battles, so they are not going into something new. I think the difference that we have is that Gaza is definitely different in the sense that it is outside the continent. Israeli has basically, I think the latest is that the Prime Minister Netanyahu has rejected the Trump plan for Gaza. So they are not withdrawing from the theater in Gaza. So in other words, you are having a force that is deploying in an area where there is active combat by the Israeli security forces. And therefore, I see that definitely is one of the strategic considerations that are going to be at play as whether this is a force that is going to do peace enforcement or just keeping the peace that does not exist. Maybe I should mention that one of the controversial policy dimensions for us here in Uganda is that Uganda is currently the chairman of the non-aligned movement and chairing the East African community. So this multilateralism that Uganda normally projects is not being seen in the decision that is sending the troops to Gaza. So I think that there is an issue in terms of the non-aligned nature of non-aligned membership of the movement, and therefore the implications for Uganda's chairmanship of NAM.
Okay, so let me come to Isaac. Isaac, let's have your thoughts. Are Ugandan forces prepared for something as politically combustible as Gaza?
Okay, thank you so much. Greetings to the viewers. As my brother said, when you look at the dynamics of Gaza, it's going to be totally different from what they have been doing across the African divide. So if you have, they have been to Somalia, DRC and other places, yes, that is fine. You have made your mark within those places, but Gaza is not going to be the same. As he mentioned, now there is an active conflict. It has not, they have not withdrawn their troops. The Israelis have not agreed to all the points that has been outlined by the United States. They have not agreed to that. But one thing that we have to also understand is that Uganda is not going under their own volition, or they are not going under only the request of the United States. They are going under the request or the approval from the UN Security Council Resolution 2803, which was passed in 2025. So it is based on that. That gives more international recognition and for them to be able to operate within those international law. But one thing that they have to also remember is that once there is an active fight, they should be prepared, because even those who are outside within the Gaza Strip are even facing some of the airstrikes. For instance, there were Ghanaian troops that encountered strikes in Lebanon. So once they are going, these are some of the risk factors that they should also take into consideration, that there can be misfired missiles which can hit their tent as well. So these are some of the challenges that they are likely to face when they enter Gaza. Gaza is also a densely populated environment that they are going. So if you are going into a densely populated place like Gaza, you need to be more tactical than what you've been doing maybe in Somalia or DRC. DRC may be a large country that you are fighting, but this one is like a portion of a country that people are fighting over, and you are going to, which has a densely population, and you're going to fight over these areas. So they need to be more tactical. Maybe they need to do more training. But when it comes to, in terms of international recognition, that one with the approval of the UN Security Council, yeah, they have it, so they can go in and support with the stabilisation, which is the international stabilisation force. That is their work that they are going to do. So they are going to join the over 20,000 troops that they are saying. So they are going to give about 2,000 troops to support this activity. So it is going to be a shared responsibility between the Uganda and various countries like Morocco and Albania and those countries that have also promised to support the activity. So it's going to be a coordinated effort. So the one thing that some of the politicians were also asking is that who is going to fund the Uganda's trip or their involvement with this stabilization? Is it going to come from the Board of Peace, or is it going to come from Uganda as a sovereign nation? Because that is the question, some of the which were legitimate, that these people were asking. It's legitimate question, because who is going to fund our operation in Gaza? who is going to, what will be the benefit for Uganda as a sovereign state. And as he mentioned that we are saying Uganda is a sovereign state, which is also non-aligned, and you are a chairman of a non-aligned movement, and you have accepted a request from, not from the Board of Peace or the United Nations Security Council, but you have accepted a request from a president which you are not aligned to. So where is your position now? Are you aligned or are you not aligned? So these are some of the pertinent questions that we need certain level of answers. And Isaac, also the,
Well, that was one of the questions that, I was going to ask later, about who would be funding it. But then I'm told that we have another guest, Daniel Kibet. He's a journalist in Kampala, Uganda. I would love to hear his thoughts as well, especially when the MP, Hassan Kirumira, asked the question, another question, that is now on everyone's lips in Kampala. Whose side is the Ugandan army going to fight on? If you can hear me, Daniel, from where you're sitting, is that a fair question? Or is it being used to score political points? And also, if Israeli strikes persist and armed groups refuse to hand over their weapons, what are the exact rules of engagement, for a Ugandan soldier standing at a checkpoint in Khan Yunis or Rafah? Hello, Daniel. Can you unmute your mic?
Can you hear me now, right?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. Sorry for that. You asked if that is a fair question, and I will say it is a very fair question. It's a legitimate question from how I see it. Why? Is because the answer will really, determine the mission's political career. Character rather, and so it becomes political point scoring basically only if it ignores the actual mandate. You see, the key issue here is the rules of engagement, and if a Ugandan soldier, a UPDF soldier, encounters an armed group, in Gaza for refusing disarmament, who authorizes force, and under what threshold can that force be authorized? And if Israeli forces, for instance, are still conducting operations nearby in Gaza or anywhere near there, how does a Ugandan unit remain neutral? How does a Ugandan soldier remain neutral? Until Kampala publishes the mandate and things like status of its forces and a status of forces agreement and rules of engagement, that particular question remains unanswered. And I think your question is very much fair, and it's a question that is being asked a lot here in Kampala.
All right, so let me come back to Godber. Godber, let's talk about the fact that Uganda is a member of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Can you help our viewers understand the tension that this creates? How does the government explain sending troops into a mission tied so closely to Washington and Israel, to a domestic Muslim constituency and to its OIC members? Let's hear from you.
No, essentially, this is something that has not been fully answered in terms of Uganda's strategic alliances. Yeah, the resolution actually to send troops to Gaza came almost just a few days, I think less than a week, when the Chief of Defense Forces of Ugandan Army, who is the son to the President of Uganda, General Kainerugaba, had just unveiled a plaque in honor of an Israeli soldier who was killed in 1976, when there was Palestinian gunmen hijacked a plane and landed it at Entebbe, a plane that was full of Israelis, and one of the Israelis was killed during the rescue mission. So this plaque was unveiled sometime last week. So you can see that in terms of strategic alliances, you can actually read an alliance between the Uganda People's Defense Forces and the Israeli Defense Forces. So in the war theater in Gaza, and in the minds of the Organization of Islamic States, I don't think that there would be any doubt that, or at least the perception would be that Ugandan forces or Uganda is allied to Israel, and therefore that is going to be tested in an operation like they are going in Gaza. But otherwise, these are questions that have not been fully answered.
How can Kampala actually, or how does it plan to manage the diplomatic fallout across the Arab and broader Muslim world if Ugandan boats are viewed locally not as neutral peacekeepers, but if they're viewed to be tilted to one side?
No, I mean, as I mentioned, given the previous engagements, UPDF has generally not performed badly in most of the war theaters that it has operated in. Even for Gaza, it's being projected as a peacekeeping operation, but I don't think that there is peace to keep in Gaza because that's an active war situation. But in other areas like Central African Republic, like Somalia, like DRC, these have been actual military engagements that the UPDF has engaged in, and even in DRC, Uganda, at some point, Uganda was accused of siding with the rebels, and then at another point with the government, because the assumption is that UPDF is in DRC based on a bilateral agreement with between Uganda and DRC. But for now, I think we have to look at the Gaza deployment for what it is, that this is an active, combustible situation, very, very complex dynamics of the conflict. We have even countries like Iran that has already supported these, some of the groups like Hamas. We have Iran's proxy groups around the region. So really, in terms of the outlook, one has to be looking at whether the UPDF can be able to really present itself as a neutral force. But I think the general perception would be that UPDF is allied to Israel and the United States, since even it is going on the request of the US.
Godber. I'm also told that we have Dr. Opul Joseph. He's an African affairs analyst in Kampala. Dr. Opul, thank you so much for joining us. Now let's find out your thoughts on all of this, because there has been speculation about quid pro quo behind this decision. And the reporting so far has not nailed down why Uganda agreed to this. So what do you think Kampala is getting out of this? Financial, diplomatic, or something else entirely?
Yeah, thank you so much, moderator, and my colleagues who have been able to make their submissions. First of all, the deployment of the UPDF to the Gaza area has come with a lot of surprise, a lot of shock to many people within Uganda and the global community. But because Uganda is not standing alone as a country, we are collaborating with the global community, and even the deployment is coming from those perspectives that Uganda is collaborating with the America and the rest of the world, and the deployment is coming upon the request from the US president, and therefore, as a country that has been collaborating with the US and other countries, Uganda Parliament has approved the deployment of the UPDF in there. Earlier on, you had raised a very critical issue that, okay, as the Uganda is collaborating with the rest of the world, what is the stake from the Arab world? Even if it is said that Uganda is going to for a peacekeeping mission, but it's very clear that the lines are drawn. Uganda is on the side of Israel.
Yeah, but if you say that, I'm so sorry to cut you. If you say that, that is the question that I actually wanted to ask Ness. Is it for, are they there for peacekeeping, policing, or for counterinsurgency?
Of course, what is on the record is that UPDF is supposed to be there on a peacekeeping mission, and we're not able to say yes or no if there are other underlying assignments and terms of reference that the UPDF will be executing while there. But what is largely discussed is that they are going there for a peacekeeping mission. But everyone thinks that UPDF is not largely on a peacekeeping mission. There might be other assignment that UPDF will be doing there. But also there are other concerns about okay, my colleague earlier on said that UPDF has performed very well in their peace missions in the rest of Africa, in Somalia, DRC, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Sudan, and many more others. But this is a different geographical terrain that might be extremely very challenging, even with the superiority of the UPDF. It might be slightly very hard for them to perform well as they have been performing in the rest of the deployments. And also the quality of the weapons used in those areas might not be the same weapons that we have in Uganda. So there should be a lot of reorganization, a lot of retraining, acquaintance, acclimatization, and many more others.
Dr. We hope Opul, that... Dr. Opul, let me also ask you this because, the reason why I asked, what they're there for is because even General Jasper Jeffers talked about, the force eventually reaching 20,000. Looking at a force that size, what about funding and logistics, which is a question that we have all, asked here? Because MP Enos Asimwe raised sharp concerns in Parliament about who is going to fund their stay in Gaza. And also given that, the Board of Peace membership requires a $1 billion contribution after 3 years. Who is footing the bill for Uganda's troop for sustainment, equipment, medical evacuation, pipelines and the likes?
We cannot accurately say who the funder is. One, the fact that the Parliament of Uganda has approved the deployment of the UPDF, it could also mean that the contribution, financial contribution, could be coming from the government of Uganda. It's also possible that the people or the government that have requested the Uganda to deploy UPDF there would also be making contributions. And then also, even if the parliament has done the approval here in Uganda, there are some skepticism that a lot of details is not yet very known even to the members of parliament in terms of the detailed terms of reference. What are they going to do? How long? What happens if a person dies from there? And many more others. That information is not readily available. As you know, that some of the security issues are very sensitive. They cannot be readily be discussed in public. So those are my assumptions that the big funding is coming from the person who's requesting. That is the U.S. government and all the partners who are involved could be having a very big hand in financing these operations.
Okay, so let's come back to Godber. Okay, no, let's come back to Daniel. I haven't asked Daniel this, Daniel, let's ask you about Morocco. Morocco has already, pledged troops alongside Uganda. Now, Egypt and Jordan also agreed to train a 12,000-member local police force. So what does it tell you or tell us about the politics of this coalition? Why is, in fact, Uganda or Africa stepping up first into a high-risk security vacuum where, traditional regional powers like European or even Gulf states are refusing to deploy their own soldiers?
First of all, I think for the issue of Morocco and Uganda, whoever is organizing this whole process, the US and of course the UN probably wants to bring in the aspect of Arab countries on board so that it doesn't appear just that it's troops from the Christian countries that are being taken there. And so they want to rule out any sort of conversation in that line. You see, Uganda might have been selected to go there or might be one of the African countries that has been chosen to go to Gaza because, of course, we can trace what UPDF has been able to do for the past how many years, since 1998 probably when they first deployed to DRC during the beginning of the Second Congo War, and then they went to Sudan. Thereafter, they went to Central African Republic, and 2007 they went to Somalia. So there's that experience that comes with Uganda, and probably what Uganda will be wanting to achieve in the long term is the issue of diplomacy. Probably Kampala is trying as much as possible to ensure that they build stronger relationships with Washington, things to do with diplomatic visibility. And of course, we can't rule out the fact that this urgent need might not be urgent, but there's that need for Kampala maybe in the future to, strategically or try to see if they can build military partnerships with other countries that are well established, like the US. And so that is why probably Kampala has been chosen, and that is why it is very important for them to go there and see how they can pull out the mission.
Okay, so let me come to Isaac. Isaac, Israeli Prime Minister, we know Benjamin Netanyahu has repeatedly stated, that Israel will not fully withdraw until Hamas is completely disarmed, while Hamas maintains that it will only hand over weapons, after a total Israeli pullout. So there has been this back and forth. So Israel also, publicly said that it has serious security concerns about elements of the same disarmament agreement that they're actually pushing for. So what happens to the entire deployment plan if Israel decides, at the last minute that it is not satisfied with how Hamas's disarmament is verified?
Thank you so much. When it comes to security and when it comes to this operation, it is mainly borders on trust issues. So if one party does not trust the process, no matter what you do, they may find difficulties working with you. So as Israeli have said, the Palestinians have also said their own thing. Hamas also has their own issues when it comes to this matter. So let me emphasize that these operations are not the normal peacekeeping that we see. So that is the underlying thing. So if I can read the Security Council resolution, which gave mandate to this Board of Peace Operations, it says that they have point 4 of it. It said that authorized member states participating in the Board of Peace and the Board of Peace to enter into such arrangement as to be necessary to achieve the objective of the comprehensive plan, including the addressing privileges and immunities of the personnel of the forces established in paragraph 7 below. So we see that this is not like the UN security peace missions or peacekeepings that are under certain law, but this one is going to be based on the agreement between the Board of Peace and the state. So if Uganda is going in and Israel is not in agreement with those things, so what are the protection for the Ugandan military? And that is going to be between the agreement between Uganda and the Board of Peace. And when they agreed on those issues, then that is why we are asking questions as to what is the detail of the agreement that they have sent to Parliament for it to be agreed upon by the parliamentarians. If they are able to do that, then we can understand that these are the protections that they have within that. If in the event that Israel said that they do not agree with this deployment and that they are also going to still continue to do their operation, because don't forget that one of the key things that this operation is supposed to do is that they are supposed to demilitarize the Gaza zone. So it means that if there are any paramilitary organization within the Gaza Strip, these groups are going to make sure that they demilitarize those groups. And if you are going to engage in that, then it means that there can be some sort of active engagement, because the active or paramilitary zones can come from either side, either from the Israeli side or from the Hamas side. So it can come from either side. So it is important for the parties to understand or agree as to whether or not when they go, what is the views on of Israel? As to now, they are saying that they do not agree to all the points. So which point do they agree? Which ones are they not agreeing? And when are they going to stop using their military to go into the Gaza Strip? Or when will they stop that? or when are they going to arrange for that? But one thing is also that these groups are supposed to go and make sure that the implementation of transnational government administration, that is what they are supposed to go and do. They are going to also to supervise and supporting of the Palestinian technocrats, a political committee of competent Palestinians from the Strip, and as champions by the Arab League, which shall be responsible for day-to-day operation of the Gaza civil service and administration. And if Israel does not agree to this, it will be difficult for any civil military coordination within the Gaza Strip. And that is where the challenge will become when it comes to the Ugandan forces engaging in this activity.
Okay, so let me quickly come back to Godber. Godber, let's talk about the fact that Israeli strikes have actually killed 1,250 people. And I mean, since the ceasefire took effect in October. So does an international stabilization force operate credibly in an environment where the guns, clearly have not gone quiet? I mean, the plan is for the force to deploy only after Israeli troops complete a phased withdrawal, which they haven't done yet. So, given how many ceasefire deadlines in this conflict have already slipped, how realistic is it to expect such, a sequencing?
No, definitely there is no, I think that the whole mission is very unrealistic. The Board of Peace alone, by the way, I should mention that the Board of Peace is a Trump project. It's more or less like a business. This is the framework for addressing the Palestinian situation or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is established within the framework of the United Nations and the UN Security Council. So the Board of Peace is really something that I think that probably is not going to have a headway in terms of progress. I think for me, I took the statement by Benjamin Netanyahu, which he basically made when he was rejecting some of the points in the 15-point peace plan, that as long as he's president, there won't be a Palestinian state. And countries like Uganda, of course, they have always subscribed to the policy of a two-state solution. So if you are deploying in a situation where the Israeli Prime Minister said there is not going to be a Palestinian state, we are not going to leave Gaza until Hamas has been disarmed. So you can clearly see that this is a mission that is starting at the wrong footing. And I think the challenges or the problems are inherent within the architecture itself, which is a Trump project. And I believe that that's what you see. That's why you see that quite most of the countries that have signed up in terms of troop contribution, some of them you can say that they are peripheral states. In other words, there are no major powers that are coming in to contribute troops. So in other words, there is hesitation across the board that you can actually just enter into an active war zone to be able to enforce peace. Maybe the last point that I would make is that in the case of Uganda, it's not surprising that the resolution, because this is some of the undercurrents that are not really normally mentioned or known a lot, that the resolution was you can say in quote unquote smuggled into the parliament, because when it was debated, it was not on the order paper. So parliament assembled, and then the order paper was amended to include the resolution. So in other words, there wasn't substantive debate. Normally, a decision of this magnitude is one that you would have expected the members of parliament to be given appropriate time to debate, or the different facets of the deployment, the accountability requirements, the mission itself. What is the mission? What are the measures of success? Otherwise, you can end up being in Gaza for the rest of for a long time the way we have been in Somalia,
Okay.
Without an end in itself.
All right. Now, coming to Dr. Joseph, Uganda's military, has also faced international criticism over domestic human rights records, in Uganda itself and conduct in past regional operations also. Now, can the Board of Peace Oversight Committee monitor compliance with international humanitarian law once the UPDF units, begin conducting security sweeps and detentions inside Gaza?
I don't know whether if you are talking to me.
Yes, Dr. Joseph. Yes, you.
I didn't pick you quite well, but I heard that you're talking about if the UPDF has been maintaining issues of human rights and many more others. I didn't pick quite the question well, but if that is the case,
I asked if the Board of Peace, Oversight Committee can monitor compliance in such cases, since the UPDF has been accused of human rights conduct in the past in regional operations.
Yes, of course. During such operations, much as that it's a requirement that the peacekeeping forces, not just only UPDF, but wherever they exist, there is a minimum code of conduct that they are supposed to exhibit and demonstrate. But sometimes when you're in such a zone, it might be difficult to maintain issues of human rights 100%. But I am optimistic that before the UPDF has deployment there, they should have been briefed, trained, guided on a minimum code of conduct that they are supposed to demonstrate while in those countries. But also, we don't rule out that there can always be breaches in one way or another, as it has always happened in the rest of the countries where the UPDF has been. But by and large, we expect them to maintain or to live to the expectations of the peacekeeping mission and their assignment.
Okay, so let me come to Daniel. Daniel, let's talk about the fact that local acceptance is, also everything in counterinsurgency, and post-conflict stabilization. So if we're to think ahead, how will ordinary Palestinians, in Gaza likely view non-Arab or dark-skinned soldiers, non-Middle Eastern troops patrolling their streets?
I really think that at this point of time, Palestinians would really welcome any force as long as it's not an Israeli force, because that then would act as a buffer against further violence. But others, of course, other Palestinians might actually see foreign armed forces like UPDF as an occupation sort of substitute, particularly in situations if it is enforcing disarmament. You say Uganda's Christian majority identity is also less important than what its soldiers actually do. And I really believe that at such a point of time, most Palestinians will, just in case UPDF and others, forces make their way to Gaza, most Palestinians will not have a lot of issues with them, but they will be very much critically following what these foreign troops will be doing, as long as they are not Israeli forces. And to me, I think they won't have a lot of issues anyway.
All right, so let me also ask this question, because Hamas, has reportedly dissolved its Gaza government to hand over power, to a UN-backed committee, right? So how will that transfer of authority intersect with where this international force is supposed to fit in? Who is in charge on, the ground once the boots land? Who will be in charge of them? That is still for you, Daniel.
I beg your pardon?
Did you get the question?
Please repeat the question again.
Okay, so I was saying that Hamas has, dissolved its government, that's its Gaza government, and handed over power to the UN or a UN-backed committee. So how will this transfer of authority, work or intersect with where this international force is, that's Ugandan force, is supposed to fit in? Who will be in charge on the ground once, the forces land?
I really think that the intended architect separates administration from security for that case. And I think the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza is actually meant to provide Palestinian civil administration, while the ISF will be so much tasked with sort of providing security support and helping enable Palestinian police deployment. But the danger is the issue of accountability gap, because if the Palestinian administration lacks that real authority on the ground, so that will bring a lot of issues. But in the long run, the crucial question is, in my own thinking, is therefore not simply who commands the soldiers, but definitely was the legitimate political authority over Gaza.
Okay, so let me come to Isaac. Isaac, we know that Uganda's parliament didn't pass this unanimously. There was a real pushback in that chamber. So what does the opposition's resistance reveal about how this deployment, could become a domestic political liability for President Museveni's government in the long run?
Okay. So when it comes to the parliament not getting a unanimous decision, what I see is that now they don't have a united front when it comes to this issue. And what the Ugandan parliament have to remember is that they are not only representing the majority, they are representing the whole country. And if there are any fallouts within this mission, it is going to be against Uganda, not against only the majority. And that is why the opposition is also there to raise certain questions to understand, because there was one of the questions that strikes me was they asking what is the liability when in terms of Uganda, what is be the liability on them? For instance, when it comes in terms of funding, in terms of shared security, in terms of when something happened, what is the need for them? Although if it goes well, we will see that Uganda is the one that will be there, who's contributing to the international peace, and as they have done in other countries within Africa. But we should also look at the dynamics of the environment and also where they are going to have themselves now. So they are not the same. Gaza is not the same as we have said earlier. So the opposition MPs should not rest. They should continue to ask questions, for the government should be able to explain and to also get clear guidelines as to what are the terms of engagement within how Uganda is going to be engaged within the Gaza deployment. Because one thing is that the Board of Peace has been tasked to supervise their activities, and they are supposed to report every 6 months to the Security Council about their activities and how things are happening within the Gaza strips. What is going to be the shared responsibility between the Board of Peace and also Ugandan administration? So the opposition has every right. And one thing that we have to also understand is that once the Hamas is saying that we have dissolved our military, we have given the state back to the UN support. That is what they call the Arab League, which is going to take over the day-to-day administration of the place. But one thing we should also remember is that in every war, you cannot disarm everyone. You cannot remove all the guns within the society. Definitely, the guns may fall into certain wrong hands who may not even agree to what the ultimate people have agreed. So what will be the effects on the side of Uganda if they are going in as this, and you have other sprinter groups who can also become groups who can form as terrorist groups and all that? What will become the effect of us? Are they able to engage or protect themselves within that divide and all that? All these things, opposition must ask questions for them to get clear understanding, so that they are not doing the work for themselves alone, but they are doing it for Uganda as a nation
Sorry
and
to
for the
cut you off,
public
Isaac,
as well.
but we've actually run out of time, and I'll just want Dr. Joseph to say his final thoughts. You know, Dr. Joseph, if you had to put a number on it, how long do you think that it will realistically take before we see the first Ugandan soldiers on Gaza soil, and what could still derail that timeline entirely? Let's hear your final thoughts.
Yeah, first of all, I appreciate the fact that Parliament of Uganda was involved in this decision, even if there are those that feel that it needed more time to debate on this. So early as possible, the UPDF should be in the Gaza Strip. And we pray that we don't register big casualties, especially that the Hamas have almost laid off their arms. But also we're not sure that whether it's 100%, the Hamas have laid off their arms. So we have to go there when we're very, very careful. And of course that we'll continue evaluating whether the UPDF is registering very commendable progress or there are many more challenges. I am sure that those provisions are there so that we can see whether it's necessary to continue staying there for a very long time, mid-term, short-term, alike. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time and for joining us on the conversation today. We had Daniel Kibet, Dr. Opul Joseph, we had Isaac Asare, and Godber Tumushabe. Thank you once again, gentlemen.